Sarah Turner. I'm a freelance medical copywriter and copywriting mentor. And it's interesting because I've had this topic on my mind that I wanted to talk about for a long time. And I'm recording this during the COVID pandemic. So it's kind of added another layer to this conversation. But today I want to talk to you about working from home and not feeling alone. So I mostly am talking to other copywriters, people who are interested in becoming freelance copywriters. So generally people who work from home. And now we're in a position where a lot more people are working from home than they probably ever expected. We ever expected. It's really a crazy time and a crazy situation. So I'll try to kind of talk to also people who are not copywriters because working from home is a transition for sure. In fact, most people, when they first start working from home, it's really exciting. They're super, they're stoked. They can wear pajamas all day. And it can be really fun and exciting at first. But most people find that it kind of quickly gets old. And the reason for that is because it can be really lonely. You don't really have to get dressed and show up and go to the office, which is, again, fun some of the time, but it can really, kind of hinder productivity, make you feel kind of in a slump. It can even lead to depression. In fact, if you look at the studies of people who work from home, a lot of people really struggle with depression. Social anxiety can go up. I actually joke with my students all the time that, like, if I don't get out and engage with people and I'm just working from home by myself for day after day after day, I get real awkward. I'm like, oh, how do we do this whole social interacting thing? And it's true. It's true for a lot of people. I've heard so many entrepreneurs talk about this. It's also something I've kind of noticed among digital nomads. Digital nomads are generally people who can work from anywhere. They're location independent, so they love to take that freedom and travel the world. And I have done that myself. I've traveled to over 30 countries, and 20 of them I've spent more than a month in. And what I've noticed is while that is fun and wonderful, we are deeply, deeply interconnected creatures, and we crave community and connection. And it is just like built into us. It is woven into our DNA, and it's so important to remember. So when I travel, I always make sure that I get connected to a community. I got to take an extra effort to make sure I get out and I go to events and things like that. But now we're in a quarantine. And so it's a little bit different because we don't have access to some of the things that we, typically have access to, like coffee shops, co-working spaces, things like that. So with that in mind, it's even more important to think about what we can do to work from home effectively, not feel lonely, not lose our minds, not, end up in an accidental like wormhole of depression and social anxiety. I have been there and I know it all too well. So it's really important. So I want to talk about some of the things that I have learned through working for myself for the last 7 years. And one thing that I think is really important is find like-minded individuals who are working on similar stuff to what you're working on online. So maybe that's entrepreneurs, maybe that's copywriters, maybe it's industry specific. They don't necessarily need to be talking about, just growing their business, but find a group, and Facebook groups are fantastic for this. Find a Facebook group of like-minded individuals. Some people might find that it's a Facebook group that is revolves around maybe a diet or a lifestyle change or, just a characteristic. It could be about personality tests. It could be about astrology. It could be about entrepreneurship. It could be about the keto diet. Maybe you're working on that. There's so many online communities right now. So I would definitely encourage you to find some of those. But as you find those, it's important to find individuals within those groups that you really connect with and to reach out to them and start a personal, just interaction. And that can eventually become your accountability bud. And I think it's super important to have somebody that you're kind of regularly checking in with. Again, try and find somebody who's like-minded. It's interesting because most of us stay and live in the towns that we grew up in. And so a lot of our friends tend to be people that we didn't really necessarily choose based on, philosophy, but we usually chose them based on location, right? Where we grew up, how we came in contact with them. And those friends can be wonderful, but I'm willing to bet that over time you've changed and you've grown. So I think it's really important to make an effort to find somebody, again, who's kind of on a similar journey to you. Make that person your accountability bud. One thing I'll say is that with everything that's going on right now, people are more open to these ideas, right? They're more open to interacting with people, strangers online, developing friendships in that way. And so that is something that doesn't seem as maybe as strange as it might have. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is to set up a weekly meeting. And that could be, again, with some of these people from the group, could be an accountability partner, but also there are, circles, again, in the entrepreneurship community, especially with location independent, workers. These groups have already exist, and they might even be a group that you find that is within your area, within your city or your town that you're living in, and maybe they can't meet right now, but they're still having Zoom calls. So I have a entrepreneur circle that I go to usually like once a week, and we are all entrepreneurs, but we're usually not talking about entrepreneurship. We're just talking about life, things that are going on in the world, how we can show up better, what we're noticing, and things like that. And that has been a real lifesaver for me. It's such a great way to feel really connected, and they exist everywhere. They're everywhere. You just got to do a little bit of digging. So I would recommend looking by maybe industry specific or interest on Facebook groups. And then I'd also recommend looking in your actual area. Again, even though you can't meet in person, I'm sure there are some meetups that are happening online that are within your community. The other thing that I want to encourage you to do is to do part of your workday outside. And this may seem like, okay, but that's not going to help me not feel lonely because there's not necessarily another person there. But being connected to nature and being outside and, just being in the sunshine is something that is really important for your overall mental health. So if you have a porch or a balcony, take advantage of it. Get yourself a hot spot if you need to. And maybe you don't even do your workout there, but maybe you do your morning routine, your morning meditation, things like that. That can help so, so much. The other thing is I live in Los Angeles, and something that's been really interesting about the quarantine is that it's been kind of normalized to just sit in a patch of grass under a tree on a median or on like next to a sidewalk, just to be outside, because a lot of people here don't have porches, balconies, backyards. So that's kind of been a behavior that's kind of been normalized, and I think it's really beautiful. I lived in the South, and in the South, front porch sitting, that was something that was totally okay and people didn't think was weird at all. And now I'm glad to see that this has kind of brought that in its own unique way to Los Angeles. So really think about how you can get outside. It will really help you feel more connected and less lonely. The other thing that I want to recommend is that you set a time each day that you get connected. Maybe at 3 o'clock every day. For me, 3 o'clock is like my slump. I am done working. I have to save all the low energy and less complicated stuff for around 3 o'clock and beyond, because my brain is just not as sharp as it is in the morning. So every day around 3 o'clock, I try to call a friend or a family member, and I switch that up, whoever it is that I'm calling that day. And that has really helped me a lot during this time. The other thing that's helped me, and again, this isn't like necessarily connecting, but has helped me feel less lonely, more productive, is taking a shower and getting dressed. It is so easy when you work at home to just wear pajamas and not shower. But I cannot tell you, if I do that too many days in a row, I don't feel great. The other thing though is if you don't get to that point, don't beat yourself up over it. It's so counterproductive to go from, trying to encourage yourself to do the right thing, to be really productive, to get dressed. But if you can't do it, if you don't do it that day, then flipping that and just beating yourself up for it is just not helping. So don't beat yourself up for it. But I will say the days where I have to get up, get dressed, put on a little makeup, I feel so much better. and more connected and more willing to reach out and do the other things that help me feel connected, like calling a friend or family, showing up to like a online meeting or call. The other thing I need to talk to you about is that social media actually exacerbates loneliness. There have been studies on this, and so it's really important to understand that you cannot just rely on online interactions to fight the loneliness that you can feel when working from home. So I want you to keep that in mind, and some of the things that really help with that, especially right now where we can't connect with family and friends like we'd want to, is making sure you're getting sunshine. Vitamin D is super important and helpful, and also just sunshine feels wonderful and great. Go on walks. Make sure you get outside when you can, especially, when the weather is nice. Even when the weather is not nice, I promise I always feel a little better. Working on mindfulness techniques, especially in nature, whether that's meditation or prayer, or making sure you stop and get really present and notice the plants that are around you, that really also helps with fighting loneliness. The other thing that's super important is your nutrition. I cannot emphasize this enough. Cutting down on sugar has helped me with my mental health in all aspects. It's helped me with depression, it's helped me with anxiety, it's helped me so, so much. And everybody has a little bit of like a difference in what's good for them nutrition wise. But for me, cutting down on sugar was one of the best things I've ever done for myself nutrition wise. And then spending time with loved ones whenever you can. Again, I know we're all a little limited right now. FaceTime helps. If you can meet in person and be socially distanced, that helps. Everything I'm saying also applies outside of the quarantine. And then I want to add this in at the very end as something that is really important to consider if you are moving from a traditional 9 to 5 to being an entrepreneur or a freelancer, is consider moving. This is something that we tend to overlook, I think, when most of us again stay and live where we grew up, and we don't, explore or get outside of what we've come to know as our reality. But if you are truly location independent, you have the ability to move to a place that better suits your needs. And I want to really encourage you to consider that as an option. It was a really big deal moving away from my family at first, but I slowly started to figure out what was really important for me and where my values were. That is why my family is on the East Coast, and now I live in Los Angeles, and one of the biggest reasons I live here is for the sunshine, for the nature, for the access to the outdoors and the wilderness, and to not go through winters, because winters were really, really hard on me. So I know not everybody has that option, but it's definitely one that's helped me. It's one of the reasons I even became an entrepreneur and focused especially on location independence in the first place. And so I want to really encourage you to do the same. So I hope that helps. Hang in there. Again, some of the things that help with loneliness are not what you would expect. They're not necessarily actually connecting with people, but just taking care of yourself better. So I hope this gives you some ideas. I hope that you are staying strong. And if you have any other ideas or thoughts that you'd love to share with the community, please drop those in the comments. We would love to hear that. And of course, if you like this, hit that thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.